And so this is a prime lesson here. Feeling good doesn't mean it is good. Most of the time, it does not mean it is good. Grade inflation is ruining education. I do think so. I do think that is a distinct possibility. As I've always said many times on this channel, education does have to do with the future of science. So I cross into education every so often to talk about topics going on there, which is why I reviewed the California mathematics framework, because math is the gate and the key to the sciences, and I've had other things to say on math here on this channel, but I thought this is interesting too, and it actually has a very published study behind it here that I want to review here at some point. I'm deciding which studies to review because there's only so many I can review in a day here, and we'll get into that here. When people lose this is by Shane Trotter, this is in Quillette, and yes, I know, y'all, there's some craziness going on with Quillette and some of the folks there. I don't care. That's unimportant. Here, they could have their disagreements and what have you. I'm just commenting on this particular article. I have nothing either way on Quillette. So that's all I'm going to say there. That is all I'm going to say on that. So, Shane Trotter writes, quoting Robert Greene here, when people lose the connection between their actions and their consequences, they lose their hold on reality, and the further this goes, the more it looks like madness. Dear God, is that not true? It is a very true statement, I think, is that the more people lose their connection between actions and consequences, there's a lot of madness that happens. A recent study conducted at the Naval Academy showed that students learn less from easy teachers. As the researchers state, instructors who tend to give out easier subjective grades dramatically hurt subsequent student performance. While a generalization, these claims support the intuitions of anyone who has ever been to school or met a human. When students can give less effort, they do. So why have schools been moving toward easier grading? Now, as I said, this is a published study that they are referring to. It is actually right here. Fear and loathing in the classroom. Why does teacher quality matter? We'll read the abstract real quick. I'm going to save actually reviewing this article for another time, but I will see soon here. So the abstract to this particular article, I will link it all for you. Don't worry. This work disentangles aspects of teacher quality that impact student learning and performance. We exploit detailed data from post-secondary education that links students from randomly assigned instructors in introductory course level courses to the students' performance in follow-on courses for a wide variety of subjects. For a range of first semester courses, we have both an objective score based on common exams graded by committee and a subjective grade provided by the instructor. We find that instructors who help boost the common final exam scores of their students also boost their performance in the follow-on course. Instructors who tend to give out easier subjective grades, however, dramatically hurt subsequent student performance. Exploring a variety of mechanisms, we suggest that instructors harm students not by, quote, teaching to the test, but rather by producing misleading signals regarding the difficulty of a subject and the soft skills needed for college success. The effect is stronger in non-STEM fields among female students and among extroverted students. Faculty that are well-liked by students and thus prized by university administrators and considered to be easy have particularly pernicious effects on subsequent student performance. So that's why I want to go back and read that, actually, because I'm kind of really curious as to what they found. Because easy teachers don't necessarily mean they are good teachers or the best teachers or anything like that. It just means that they're passing people. You have a high passing rate, which, if you're making it super easy, doesn't necessarily mean anything good, and you're probably shafting students in the future. Anyway, that's a topic for another video of another time. Like I said, I do want to get into it, but not right now. That is, January 2021? That is in SSRN. Actually, I will link it if you're curious. I will let you go there. In a decade working in high schools, I've seen a consistent push to reduce writing, reading, and note-taking, expand late work windows, lighten workloads, dilute the weight of assessments, and most fundamentally to eliminate failures. This is a problem. This is the thing. Failure is a good thing every so often. You don't want to fail all the time. You don't want a culture like failure is okay. But failure is good in the sense that you can learn from it. This is where we're lacking in teaching about resiliency, is that you can bounce back from failure. You can learn from failure. You can learn to be better. And that's something you need in the sciences a lot, because trust me, you have an awful lot of failure up front on that. And taking myself in as an example, first paper I got published, I went through 20 drafts of that paper because I couldn't write it right. I didn't know what a damn thing I was doing. And the only way I could learn was by doing, really. Which means you do fail many times. You fail many times at it. So here you go, right? The same can be seen at the university level. The amount of time college students have spent on academic work has gone from 40 hours per week in 1961 to 27 in 2003 to less than 12 hours in 2008. During that time, the average grade has risen in both public and private universities, while national SAT scores continue to decline. Today's graduates are not smarter or more prepared for their future, but at least they think they are. See, if you're making it easier, you're not prepared. Sorry. The roots of these trends can be found in generations of self-esteem culture and gradual education and a gradual educational shift from a standards-driven approach to one of customer service. As consumerism envelops society, our schools become more concerned with perception and appeasement than learning. School, in the eyes of parents and administrators alike, became something to a game. The lessons taught an arbitrary ritual that stood between students and the diploma they needed. And this is a bad thing if it becomes about consumerism. School is the one place where it should not be about customer service. That doesn't mean you should allow any abuse or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But it should never be customer service that you feel good about the experience, because feeling good all the time doesn't mean you're doing good. It doesn't mean learning anything here. And that's kind of important, because if you're not learning anything in content standards, and you should be teaching that STEM is difficult, that some of these careers are very difficult that you want to go into, not that they're easy and that everybody can do it. Anyway, but if you're shafting students from failure, and if you're shafting students from having to meet standards, well, you're shafting them from having a good future. And you're shafting science for its future as well. You're not going to have students that are capable of doing good science and innovating very much if you don't have these standards met and show that students can master at least some of the concepts. All the while, headlines continued to note America's declining status in world education rankings. More money was targeted at shrinking gaps between different groups and supporting the disadvantaged, yet scores declined across nearly every demographic. Still, schools are moving further away from standards. Walk into any high school professional development and you won't hear discussion about what skills students will need for an uncertain future or about specific competencies that students are struggling to master. Instead, there is a parade of new strategies to make learning effortless. Schools have embraced the ideology of intrinsic motivation. If students aren't invested in their learning, the thinking goes, it is because we haven't made the environment fun enough, interesting enough, safe enough, or education's answer to everything, because we haven't not understood the ways that digitally distracted youth learn and consequently have not integrated enough new technology. These are a lot of excuses, and no, learning is not supposed to be effortless. You do have to put in effort to learn something. You have to take the time to read and to do research and what have you. It is not effortless. Science is not effortless itself. Science, in a way, being that perpetual search for the truth, you're learning all the time. You have to be reading and thinking and writing and coding all the time. It is not effortless. It can't be. To be fair, intrinsic motivation does matter, as does connecting with students and making content interesting. Furthermore, harder grading does not necessarily breed better learning. We've all had that amateurish teacher who hardly taught but made a point of asking obscure questions as if being difficult would cover up their insufficiencies. There is also a lot more wrong with education than just low standards. We ignore movement and nutrition despite an obesity epidemic, prioritize broad, superficial curriculums, and neglect logic and critical analysis, which should be the backbone of post-elementary education. In an era of information overload, students are never taught to discern truth from falsehood, and parents never guided toward strategies for limiting pernicious smartphone behavior. Okay. I had to catch that for a second because I wasn't sure I read that last paragraph quite right. But intrinsic motivation, yeah, it does matter. But it also matters that the students try to learn regardless of the environment that they're in. The environment does play a role, though, too, because, if you're not in a safe environment and you're more worried about, getting punched or getting beaten up or something like that, of course you're going to have a hard time learning. I'm not neglecting that. Things going on at home, issues there, it's going to be difficult to learn. Yes, you still have to want to try to learn, though. And if students don't want to try to learn, that's a whole other problem. If you're not dealing with stopping the smartphone behavior, you really got to, as a parent, keep them away from technology. I am a big proponent of kids go nowhere near an iPhone, go nowhere near an iPad. Do not allow your kids to be on Facebook or Twitter or what have you until they are well into their teenage years, if not the very late teens, early 20s, if you can help it. But, they technically become an adult at 18. I honestly don't think it's a good idea for kids to get on social media, to be honest. I really think it's a bad idea. But that's a whole other topic for a whole other day. But yeah, the biggest thing is, you shatter standards, though. To me, the biggest thing is shattering standards. Because if you're shattering standards, you're shafting the kids out of their long-term future anyway. Here by letting them pass without having them actually show that they've mastered something. Still, if you want to improve education, the place to start is by enforcing standards. We can debate what should be learned, how it should be taught, when and with how many breaks, or what the environment should look like. And when the grades stop reflecting mastery, the entire operation becomes performative. Grading becomes less meaningful. Teachers play the role of thermostat, cooling off grades as soon as they detect too many are in hot water. As a teacher of 20 years recently vented, quote, "Just tell me what you want the grades to look like. I can make the breakdown whatever you like." Grades are a metric. Like all metrics, they are subject to missing immeasurable components, essentially soft skills, like how well you interact with groups or how you utilize body language in persuasive argument. Better teachers will develop the ability to detect and integrate these soft skills into grade determinations, but the grade will always be a crude approximation. Still, we must have metrics that intend to measure relevant data and represent it with as much accuracy as possible. A strength and conditioning coach knows that the translation between their workouts and each athlete's sport is fuzzy. Helping a linebacker add 50 pounds to his back squat doesn't predict how many more tackles he will make, yet we know it helps. We want to identify the trainable qualities that we believe will most influence his performance, and we want to measure those qualities with as much accuracy as possible. If nice coaches shave off a few milliseconds when testing 40-yard dash times or randomly inflate athletes' bench press numbers, then the data is compromised. The more this happens, the less valuable the data. It is the same with school grades. Rampant grade inflation has made grades less useful, while ironically making them the entire point of school. The subject becomes a means to an end. It is the topic for the activity that needs to be done to assign the grade. So, grade inflation, yeah. To be honest, if you get into grade inflation, by the time you're graduating high school, that high school diploma can become utterly meaningless because you haven't earned it. You haven't shown mastery for anything, and that sincerely is a big problem if you just can't master anything. And that's the danger and the worry I have with science, is that a lot of these disciplines of STEM are not easy fields to go into. They require some really rigorous thinking, some seriously good math, and the whole likes there. And yet mastery is not what's taught. Grades get inflated so that you can pass students out so that they feel good. And so this is a prime lesson here. Feeling good doesn't mean it is good. Most of the time, it does not mean it is good. What did you do today? I had to fill out a chart matching the New Deal policies with their effects. What's the New Deal? I don't know. Thus, education devolves into a lot of activity for the sake of the activity, with little recognition for what skills truly matter or for the ability of education to improve lives. The same happens with standardized testing. When improving education becomes a priority, states roll out some new testing regime. The test is supposed to better assess how well students are learning, but the grading criteria are manipulated so that it's very difficult to see how well students have actually learned. Getting 0 questions correct on this year's Texas Biology STAR test earns a score of 1418. To pass the STAR, students only have to get 19 out of 54 questions correct, or as the state reports it, a 35/50. Not that standardized testing is the answer. An overemphasis on tests has led to a deprofessionalization of classroom teachers and hurt educational quality, but the point remains. By making feedback confusing, we negate its ability to prompt appropriate adaptations. So that's a fun thing right there. I didn't quite know about that as much, but I don't, at least, something when I was going into a STEM field or what have you, there's a lot of professors that I know who basically look at the standardized test to make sure you've met the minimum, and after that, they don't care. Because at least in different colleges, there are certain like minimums you have to get for the SAT, for the writing and the math portion, and for the GRE it was the same thing. And the GRE is more so because it depends upon what program and what professor you want to work with in grad school. But those kinds of things are like that. And so again, this is inflation. Your students seem to be doing well when really they are not. The point of assigning grades is to give feedback to reflect reality. When grades are distorted, they stop delivering feedback that would help teachers to accurately assess what was learned, students to accurately determine how well they are learning and prompt greater effort, and the entire system to adapt to the needs of students. This is especially the case among low-achieving students who are often passed through high school without developing the ability to write intelligible emails or to do basic addition. I'm constantly amazed by how many high school athletes I train who simply cannot add weight totals in their head. That's scary. That's freaking scary. Oh, I'm worried for the future of math and science. Many argue that everyone just needs a high school diploma so that they can move on with their lives. McDonald's workers need a high school diploma now too. But this has nothing to do with the skills a high school diploma is supposed to guarantee. The only reason you would need a high school diploma for low-skilled jobs is because we have made it nearly impossible not to graduate. You don't have to do anything but show up and occasionally turn something in. Not graduating is now the ultimate red flag. Likewise, we tell every student they need to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get a college diploma, and then many go wait tables. By inflating grades across the board, we've created an insane labyrinth of debt where employers look for candidates with an unrelated college diploma because it signals they've done more than waltz through high school. Our cultural expectations grow increasingly insane as the distance grows between reality and our social indicators. Grade inflation does happen in colleges too. Which is not definitely not a good thing at all when it comes to science either, if you're just passing through students easy. And it makes it even worse because, if the students are coming from high school and they don't have mastery of particular fields and they want to go into a STEM field, well, you have the continued problem of, well, we got to pass somebody. We can't fail them all. It doesn't look well in a college evaluation if you end up failing everybody, so pass them through. Same thing can start to happen, and that just automatically will have a huge trickle-down effect, and that would just wreck science. This is why so many of these things have got to change, and change pretty quickly, I might add. But yeah, cultural expectations grow increasingly insane as the distance between reality and social indicators grow too. I have a radical idea. Assign grades based exclusively on academic performance. The quality of the writing, the accuracy of the math equation, the understanding of the historical themes. Grade everything from mastery alone and consider it a breach of ethics to do otherwise. Most students would work far harder, learn far more, and come to enjoy it. They'd invest enough to cultivate more rewarding interests and become better citizens. Some would not rise to the occasion and would be left behind, but that is already happening. So many students sit in algebra classes lacking a grasp of basic arithmetic. We put students in positions where we know they won't learn anything and, in the process, make a mockery of the entire system. What's worse, this refusal to engage with reality precludes better adaptations, technical skill roots, reality-based community support initiatives, and focused remediation for those motivated to bridge gaps. This past year, our students have learned less than ever because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the limitations of virtual learning. How much better might they have fared if they had not been trained to find excuses and expect they'd be passed along? How much more important is it to have a mastery reflective grading so that we can diagnose gaps and target them? To suggest that we should grade dishonestly is to fundamentally misunderstand the point of education. It prolongs childhood, ensures less engagement, and reinforces a culture of deferred responsibility. Nothing could be more cruel. So he's got a couple of notes here, and I appreciate this teacher writing this piece because what he's just described here is what I worry about immensely with respect to education and the future of science and STEM fields and what have you, because students, in addition to having everything made so easy so as not to hurt the students' feelings, to make them feel good, the other problem is that they're also learning all the woke nonsense at the same time. I recommend you go over to The Reason We Learn if you want that stuff about education there. There's a lot of great stuff there that would be worthwhile to see. Nothing could be more cruel to these students to not teach them responsibility and resilience and how to engage and to help them mature into responsible adults. Parents need to step to do that, and educators need to stop treating kids with kid gloves, ironically. Not ironically. It's a strange saying. Sorry. It's been a long day. But this is why I worry, because these students are coming out with a culture of deferred responsibility, and I'll tell you one thing right now. You come in with deferred responsibility in your mind, that you've grown up in that culture, that you can just push it off. When you've got deadlines as an author in a STEM field, when you've got deadlines, you got to produce a grant proposal by this time. You got to be cognizant of writing. You got to do that. Produce that grant proposal. Then you got to do the grant proposal in the time that you said you would do the grant proposal if you get funded. All those kinds of things. You got to submit papers by this time. You got to submit. There's deadlines for everything. And if you have a culture of deferred responsibility, that says that you're not reliable. You're not reliable to produce things on time, to get work done. And that doesn't help you get grant funded in science. So goodness knows what it means. But none of that helps with any of this. And particularly if you're just teaching the lack of resilience. Organized skepticism with our critiques, strong critiques of each other and all of our ideas in science, comes with the other problem being, well, not a problem, but comes with it being that sometimes we can be pretty harsh with each other. I've gotten some pretty harsh reviews when I've been reviewed in journals. And so there's things like that, but you've got to be resilient. And this kind of culture that's going on now, they don't teach that kind of level of resilience. And that's what's concerning me. And so that's why there's a lot of concerns I have for the future of science, given some of the things going on with education, which are directly related to each other now at this point. That's it for now. If you like this video, hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good jazz. Don't forget, you can come over to Locals and join us. There's going to be more things going on next year, particularly just for supporters and locals, if you want to come there. But members can lurk for free and get access to a few things there too. Until next time, I'm Adrian. I hope you stay curious, my friends.